All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to try and solve a really fascinating puzzle in the world of justice. It's all about why mediation, the faster, cheaper way to solve disputes, isn't just the default option everywhere you look. As it turns out, the answer is way more complicated than just writing a new law.
And this right here is the big question, isn't it? We all get that court battles can be these long, expensive, totally draining experiences. Mediation, on the other hand, offers a path to finding some common ground, to actually resolving things. So if it's such a no-brainer, what's really stopping it from being the go-to choice for everyone?
Well, to get to the bottom of that, you have to realize there's this massive global push happening right now for better ways to handle disputes. A lot of the chatter coming out of the recent Global Dispute Resolution Conference in Paris shows that countries all over the world are trying to figure out how to move beyond that classic courtroom showdown.
And that leads us to the million-dollar question for governments and legal systems everywhere. It's not really a debate anymore about whether mediation is a good idea. Pretty much everyone agrees it is. The real challenge is how you weave it into the fabric of the justice system so it becomes, a normal, trusted, and even a primary option. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a country that tried to solve this with a really big, bold move. I'm talking about Italy. Back in 2010, they basically decided to legislate their way into a full-blown mediation revolution. And I gotta say, at first, the results looked absolutely staggering.
I mean, just look at this chart. After Italy passed its 2010 law, which made mediation a mandatory first step for a whole bunch of civil cases, the number of mediations just went through the roof. On paper, it looks like a total slam-dunk success story. A simple law fixed the problem. Case closed, right?
Well, not so fast. The experts looking at this at that Paris conference came to a very different conclusion. What they realized was that, yeah, the law created this massive surge, but the raw numbers just didn't tell the whole story. And here's the key takeaway. A legal mandate all by itself just isn't enough to create real, lasting change.
So what was the real secret sauce to Italy's long-term success? It wasn't just the law. It was the slow, and sometimes difficult, work of getting buy-in from the people who actually run the system, the lawyers and the judges. The law basically forced the door open, but what made the system stick was a cultural shift that took years and years to build up. And Italy's experience really shines a light on a universal truth here. You can't just wave a legal magic wand and fix everything, because there are these deeper, more tangled roadblocks that get in the way of mediation really taking hold.
According to the experts, there are 6 big ones. You've got things like fragmentation, right? Where the rules in one country don't line up with another's, which just creates chaos. Then there's low visibility. And this one is huge, because mediations are private. All the amazing success stories stay behind closed doors, so the public never sees how well it can work. And then you have the other stuff. Wildly uneven skills among mediators, a real lack of hard data on outcomes, deep cultural resistance from lawyers, and even economic models that literally pay more for conflict than for resolution.
Let's just double-click on that cultural resistance for a second, because it is so important. For generations, lawyers have been trained with an adversarial mindset. Their job is to fight and to win that fight. Mediation, though, asks for a totally different approach. It requires a problem-solving mindset, where the goal isn't to win, but to, resolve. That is a massive, massive shift.
Okay, so if a top-down mandate isn't the whole answer, what else is there? For that, let's head over to our second case study, Singapore. They took a completely different tack. Instead of focusing on forcing people into a room, they focused on building something way more valuable, the currency of trust. And they did this with something called the Singapore Convention on Mediation. Honestly, this thing is a total game changer. To put it simply, it gives a mediated settlement the exact same legal weight as a court judgment. That means it's enforceable in any country that's signed on. It gives the agreement real teeth.
And this is a brilliant example of how it works. Imagine you mediate a business dispute in, say, country A, and you sign a settlement. Before, you might have been kind of crossing your fingers, hoping the other party, who's based in country B, would actually follow through. But now, with the convention, you can just take that agreement to a court in their country and get it enforced directly. It just removes all that risk and uncertainty.
And listen, this isn't some niche, abstract idea. We're talking about major legal and financial hubs like the United Kingdom getting on board. The UK signed the convention just last year, which sends a really clear signal that they want to strengthen their position as a global center for resolving disputes. It just goes to show this model of building trust is gaining some serious momentum.
So what do we learn when we put Italy's big push next to Singapore's trust model?
Well, the big lesson is that making mediation work isn't about finding one single silver bullet. It's about building an entire interconnected system, an ecosystem.
And that ecosystem has 5 essential parts. Yes, legislation is the foundation. It creates the initial push. But you also absolutely need top-notch training for mediators and lawyers. You need economic incentives that actually reward solving things early. You need that cross-border enforceability to build trust. And you need better data to make the successes visible. All of these pieces have to work together.
Now, of course, you might be thinking, what about technology? And for sure, it has a role to play. Digital tools can make the whole process way more efficient, more accessible. But the experts are really clear on this. Technology is a tool. It's not a replacement. At its core, mediation is about people, empathy, and judgment. And that means the human mediator is always going to be right at the heart of it.
So when you boil it all down, the critical point is this. Building a real culture of mediation is about so much more than rules. It's about fundamentally changing mindsets. And that leaves us with one final, really important question to think about. As we all move forward, is it possible the future of justice is less about winning a fight and more about simply finding a resolution?